we decided to go back and listen to what was said in 2012 about Obamacare. It wasn't very popular. By the way, it's still not popular. We decided to go back and listen to what was said in 2012 and what was said in 2013 and then what was said in 2014 and what's being said this year. And it's fascinating. Now, originally, I want to preface this montage we're about to play. This was created focusing on those individuals who were on the special and select and set apart task force. They were selected. This task force, of course, has elevated these 16 politicians to have more influence than any of their colleagues and counterparts, thereby actually making the constituents they represent more represented than, say, if you have a legislator who's your representative who's not on the task force. We've talked about that many times, how task forces actually hurt us in terms of the idea of a representative government. So these 16 people, so originally we wanted to focus on these 16 people and figure out what they used to say. Because, see, here's the thing, is they're coming up on a vote. There's going to be a vote, and they're going to vote in all likelihood to continue Medicaid expansion because that's what Governor Asa Hutchinson wants. That's also what some Republicans on the task force want. But there are some Republicans on the task force who have said before this, for years, they were dramatically opposed to a lot of this stuff, right? I mean, just opposed to Medicaid expansion in general. Yet now they're on the task force, and what we're hearing and what we have evidence of is that they're going to go ahead and vote to continue this thing. So originally, that's what this montage was. And it fast became something different because I realized, as I was listening to this audio, that there was a story being told. And I'll be honest, and this is, in many ways, this is art. Because this is telling the story. It's something that actually happened. And so we did not limit quotes and audio clips of politicians to just those who were on this legislative task force. We decided to find all of the ones relevant that told the story of this big government experiment expansion that Arkansas has participated in. And so we have Senators John Cooper, Bart Hester, Jason Rapert. We have State Representative David Meek, Senator Missy Irvin in this. We have former State Representative John Burris, Senator David Sanders. We even have Congressman Bruce Westerman, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. So the interesting thing is not all of these people once had an opinion negative against Obamacare and then changed their minds when they were pressured. Some of these people that you're going to hear have stayed strong, but most of them have not. Most of them said very critical things about this and have come around for some reason or another. And we'll talk more about that later. So without further ado, I wanted to give you some background. Here it is. This is the montage, the timeline of the Obamacare private option here in Arkansas.
Time before I came here, I would have thought that somebody was misleading somebody. But being exposed to the mysteries and mysticisms of the state capitol, I have learned that there are old truths and new truths. 2 years ago, we were operating on the old truth.
2012.
Yeah, and I think the biggest criticism about how we're reforming and changing this Medicaid, it's not been tested. We don't know if it's going to work. It is a grand experiment. I'm sorry, Arkansas is not a lab rat.
When have you ever heard of Arkansas wanting to lead in anything? Usually for 49. And all of a sudden, on a health care changes that are approved by the Obama administration, we're now actually a leader in. That should tell you something. That should put red flags. That should tell you something. That should put red flags.
The very thing that they say is going to be our savior is running people out of the medical profession. This has all been tried. The United Kingdom and in Canada.
2013.
The whole reason why we propose the private option is to put people on a path. But the more they earn, the more they pay. If it didn't do that, I would not support it. And under this plan, that's what happens.
Under the private option, we will have the most restricted Medicaid population in the country.
I mean, there is incentives to work. The reason why I'm supporting it is because we're incentivizing the right behavior.
It will be for the aged, the blind, and the disabled. As you earn more, you will pay more.
I'm not particularly a fan of hospitals, insurance companies, and doctors. I mean, because, everybody has their hand out, right? Everybody has their hand out, right?
To the hospitals, providers, insurance companies, and all those who stand to profit from Medicaid expansion, to the lobbyists and political consultants who made a lot of money helping my colleagues get elected by running against Medicaid expansion, but are now encouraging them to vote for it, shame on you.
2014.
Our opponent made it about the private option, and obviously it's been rejected.
With somebody like me, I ran my entire campaign on not expanding Medicaid, right? So it is almost regardless of what compromise we come up with, I could not vote to expand Medicaid, which is what the private option is. I cannot support funding of this private option. I cannot support funding of this private option.
It may be that we have to cut services and raise taxes. Right. Congressman Tim Griffin said the reason he was against the private option was because there is no dedicated funding stream.
There is no dedicated funding stream. There is no dedicated funding stream.
This is just something that we can't afford.
First of all, I'd say I'm opposed to the private option. It is Obamacare in Arkansas. Obamacare, from the beginning to the end, is an unworkable act. It is a gathering of power.
I mean, it's bad for Arkansans because of a lot of reasons.
If we accept this, we are putting Arkansas on the hook.
It's just not going to be good for those who are working and trying to make a living.
This is the implementation of the health care exchanges in Arkansas, which is the very fiber of Obamacare.
We want to hold the line on government. We want to say there's just too many handouts from the federal government, and when we take the handouts, there's strings attached. Let's don't do this. In 2020, it will be a total of 10%. 10% is a lot of money, especially when you consider the number that are on the private option. There's payday someday.
We're expanding government, the most it's ever been expanded in, I guess, history of the state.
That's what we campaign on. I will. I won't. I promise. What we don't campaign on is sometimes, usually, maybe. If the governor does this, if a lobbyist pressure be this way, if my mayor calls, maybe sometimes, right? We need candidates when the going gets tough, and it's tough. We'll remember the I will and I won't.
2015.
Today, we operate on the new truth.
The phrase private option itself has become politically toxic, so much so that it's almost impossible to have a constructive conversation about health care reform in Arkansas without passions rising and folks taking sides.
Here's what the bill says. Each one of these cases that I put up there is where it says it ends Medicaid expansion. It ends it.
As governor, I will accept the continued expansion dollars from the federal government.
Here's what the bill says. Each one of these cases that I put up there is where it says it ends Medicaid expansion. It ends it.
As governor, I will accept the continued expansion dollars from the federal government.
40,000 people on Medicaid that had out-of-state addresses.
That's the goal that I've had since day one, is to not just repackage the private option and try to sell it to you folks.
For me as a conservative, it's hard to try to take a debate where you're talking about winning the debate as we're going to expand entitlement programs, but we're going to do it better. There's a role for government, and there's something that government needs to stay out of, and I felt that government needs to stay out of our health care, specifically for able-bodied working-aged adults.
So what concerns me about the future is whether or not in 2017 we will be operating under today's truth, or will there be a new truth? When I ran for office, one of the promises I made was that I would do what I could to put an end to the private option. Now, of course, you're going to sit out there and say that's exactly what this bill is doing. But the short time that I have been here, what I have learned is that sometimes words have meaning, sometimes words don't have meaning. That what is true today will not necessarily be true tomorrow.
I want to refer everybody back to my remarks because that's the key language that was carefully crafted.
Candidates need to be asked, what is your price?
Finally, to my friends who are considering voting for this appropriation, but doing so against the convictions in your heart, I ask you this: is this vote worth 30 pieces of silver?
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. I know it was lengthy, but believe me, it was a lot longer before we edited and edited and edited and edited. So many powerful statements there. And you got to wonder, of the legislators that were in this that are now supporters of the private option or continuing Medicaid expansion, apparently people like Bart Hester, people like John Cooper, people like Cecile Bledsoe, people like Senator Missy Irvin. Of course, the important thing here would be Cecile Bledsoe, John Cooper, and Bart Hester are on the task force, which is interesting. You know, you look at this and you got to wonder if that stuff was true then, is it true now? Did it just work good on the campaign trail?